Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our afternoon webinar for our super strategies. Today we are going to be discussing strategies to support students experiencing homelessness and focusing on those super strategies. And my name is Kirsten Bayer with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support, and I'm going to be moderating today's webinar, and then my colleague Brittany Boston, who is also from ICSPS, will be presenting on the super strategies and the content for us today. And so before Brittany gets started with her presentation, I just wanted to go over a couple housekeeping items. So we are in listen only mode for any attendees joining us today. And if you have any questions as the webinar proceeds, feel free to post those in the question or the chat box or the comment box. This is the same text box, actually. Question, comment, or chat is what it might be labeled for you. And that kind of just depends on where you're joining us from today. If you're joining us on your cell phone or a tablet or a desktop computer or a laptop computer. So just look for that text box on your GoToWebinar control panel and you can converse and ask questions, comment, and get some feedback for us through that text box. And then we will do a Q&A at the end of the webinar, as well as answering questions throughout as Brittany pauses throughout her presentation. So again, we welcome all that feedback. And then another quick housekeeping reminder is that this webinar is being recorded, and we will have the recording and Brittany's slides today accessible on our website within 48 hours of today's webinar. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our presenter and my colleague Brittany Boston for today.
Yes, thank you, Kirsten. Good afternoon, everyone. As Kirsten said, my name is Brittany Boston, and I am the Associate Director for Equity and Outreach at the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. And so today is the first webinar of a series that we are doing covering all of the special populations under Perkins V. And so this particular webinar is really focusing in on students who are experiencing homelessness. And so I will start by saying that this is not an exhaustive list of strategies. Neither are the super strategies documents themselves. Students experiencing homelessness, or homeless individuals as Perkins V refers to it, is a new member to our special populations family. And so throughout this year and next year, I imagine more research and more evidence-based practices will be coming up and coming to the forefront on how to really hone in and support this particular group of students. So before we get too far in, for those of you who may not be familiar with ICSPS and what the center does, we are housed at Illinois State University, and we create, support, and deliver professional development for CTE professionals across Illinois. So we work a lot with the Illinois Community College Board and the Illinois State Board of Education. I'm sure you've probably heard our voices a lot. You could probably hear, the housekeeping spiel that Kirsten did in your sleep at this point. But we really focus on access, transition, recruitment, retention, and completion, especially focusing around those special populations learners. So what are we going to talk about today? First, we're going to define what a quote unquote homeless individual is under Perkins V. We will discuss some ways that we can inform and recruit students who, into CTE programs who may be experiencing homelessness. And I use the term inform and recruit because this is both applicable to the secondary and post-secondary systems. And I know that terminology varies. When you're talking about the secondary system, you're not really recruiting students, right? We're more informing them about the CTE programs and the CTE options that are available to them. Whereas when they transition into post-secondary, it is more that recruitment mindset of kind of informing them of what your program is, what your community college has to offer, and kind of pulling them in. And then we'll go over a few supports and services that can be implemented and utilized to assist these students in their success and movement through a CTE program. And then I will open it up for questions and discussion, and any comments that you may have. I definitely want this to be interactive as much as it can for a webinar and hear from you. And then we'll go through some additional resources, and I will touch base on the webinar series and some of the upcoming webinars that we will be having throughout November and December. So how does Perkins V define a homeless individual? So Perkins V itself does not actually define what a quote-unquote homeless individual is. Rather, it looks to the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. And to be very specific, it's Section 725 of the Act, which is where all of the definitions are laid out for that act. So a homeless individual is an individual who lacks a fixed, regular, or adequate nighttime residence. And fixed, regular, and adequate are the three key words there that you really want to focus on and pay attention to when you're determining a homeless status. And we'll get more into that as we go throughout the webinar. But the definition also includes some more specifics when it's referring to children and youth. So children and youths who are sharing the housing or the home of other people due to, loss of housing, economic hardship. Maybe they had a family member or their guardian, lose employment, and so they're staying with friends or a relative. And this can include those that are living in motels, hotels, trailer parks. And again, this is where that fixed, regular, and adequate comes into play. Now, motels and hotels are appropriate, if you are vacationing or whatever the case may be and need that temporary residence. But for a fixed, regular residence, a motel and a hotel isn't necessarily the most, quote, adequate residence for that. Also, children and youth who are in emergency or transitional shelters, if they've been abandoned at hospitals, and then those who are awaiting foster care placement. And so if you are familiar with Perkins V and the special populations, students who are involved in foster care are actually its own separate special population. And you'll see here that with all special populations, there tends to be quite a bit of overlap. And so a student who, falls within that category of economically disadvantaged or foster care, there may be some overlap and they may fall into more than one special population. And because of that, as we move through some of these strategies and move throughout this series, you will see that a lot of the supports and services tend to overlap as well. And so we're also talking about children and youth who have a primary nighttime residence that is public or private place, but it's not designed for regular sleeping accommodations. Also living in cars, parks, public spaces. And the definition under McKinney-Vento also includes migratory children. And so migratory children is, as you can see on the screen here, is defined under ESSA, or the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And so those are children who their parent or parent's spouse or step-parent is a migratory agricultural worker. So they move for seasonal or temporary employment. And then the Act also goes on to define unaccompanied youth as a homeless child or youth not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. So that is sort of the population that we're looking at, how it's defined, how you can classify that quote unquote homeless status for a student. So now let's talk about some ways we can inform and recruit this particular special population when it comes to CTE programs. So I think one of the key things here, with the secondary system, I know it is a requirement that the district has a homeless liaison, and I think it's a good strategy to keep in place, even for the post-secondary system, to have a single point of contact. We all know what it's like to, whether we're, calling customer service for our cable company and we're directed to 5 different people just to solve or get one answer questions. And so really having that single point of contact to sort of take the lead when it comes to assisting these students, providing them with the supports and services they need, even if those supports and services are in-house, or if they're referring people out to other agencies and centers within your area that can support them as well. But really being able to build a relationship with a single individual to assist them. And then giving students a chance to really explore their interests and aptitudes. And this can be done through, computerized career information software, those employment tests that we do, really being able to give them the chance to kind of discover what it is they're interested in. I always joke that before starting and working within the world of CTE, I really wasn't very aware of the different possibilities for careers and employment that were out there. And as a high schooler or as someone entering into the a college program, you can only show interest in career fields that exist. And so giving them the opportunity to really explore those options is a great way to gauge and kind of gain interest in CTE programs. And again, like I said, you'll see that a lot of these super strategies for the special populations overlap. And so this is one that can be used for all special population students or just all students in general, educating them on the different CTE opportunities available to them. And again, going further into that, letting students know about the different career options within CTE and how they can get started during high school. We all know that there are dual credit options, and we all know that there are opportunities for them to start on that CTE track within high school. And so having, academic advisors and career counselors and guidance counselors aware of that information and providing that information to all students. And then also partnering with your local high school or community college based on your organization and who you are currently working with for those CTE exploration days. It's been found that the sooner we provide this information to the students and the sooner we can give them those hands-on experiences, the more likely they are to be interested within CTE and the career options available to them. So reach out to your community college, or if you're community college, reach out to your high school and really develop that partnership to allow students to see what that path looks like. So if I start my junior year of high school in a CTE program, what is that road going to look like for me? And then also emphasize potential earnings and timelines for completion. One of the great things about CTE programs is the ability for those students to sort of have those on and off ramps, right? We have those stackable credentials, so they can start in high school, they can gain this certificate, and when they graduate, if they need to do so for extenuating circumstances or whatever the case may be, they can enter into employment. They can make a living in order to, get an apartment and provide for their family, but then go back to the community college system and build on those certificates and credentials that they have in order to further climb that ladder, so to speak. And some more ways we can inform and recruit for our CTE is really to build those relationships and identify those community agencies that can help you assist, support, and identify homeless youth rather in your school or within your community college. And so those agencies can include, if you have a dropout prevention program, in your area, working with them as a high school to lessen that percentage and to give them the supports and services that they need to stay in high school to graduate. Shelters, soup kitchens, transitional living programs, street outreach teams. I mean, the list goes on and on. Community action agencies, that is one that I can actually speak to personally. I worked for a community action agency, and the resources that they have available to them are very appropriate for, families, youth, students who may be experiencing homelessness in order to help provide them assistance and kind of get them back on their feet. And then also offering assistance with admission, registration, financial aid. This is obviously more on that community college side of the house. But, being able to help them navigate that process. We know for our community college students, a lot of them may be first-gen college students. And so, enrolling and accessing the community college system and how to, gain financial aid, how to register. For us, as people who may be going through that process every day, it seems like a piece of cake. But for someone who is not familiar with that, that's a lot. That's a lot of paperwork, a lot of questions, a lot of information to provide. So being able to offer extra assistance is great. And then when we're looking sort of in that same concept, but for the secondary system, making sure that school districts can consider developing or looking at their policies that they have in place in order to support unaccompanied youth who may enroll mid-year, who may enroll mid-semester, and what all is needed to provide consent, how they sign for issues, how they get involved in extracurricular activities. Just really looking at, for both secondary and post-secondary systems, looking at the process and looking at the policies and making sure that to the best of our ability, we are allowing these for individuals to really, for our programs to really be accessible to all individuals. So now we'll talk a little bit more about supports and services for students. And again, this is not an exhaustive list. You'll see that if you have looked at the super strategies, which I hope you have, and if you haven't, I encourage you to do so. There are more examples on the super strategy documents themselves. But again, like I said, this is a new edition, and so there will be more information coming out as time goes on. And then also we would love to hear from you guys as programs, what you are currently doing or plan to do in order to provide those additional supports and services for students and families experiencing homelessness. But one of the key things is, that training, that professional development piece for staff on federal resources available to students and families who are experiencing homelessness. And we know that this can be forever changing. We just went through an election, and so there's a chance that there may be more opportunities provided, more resources provided. There's a chance that there may be less. This is one of those areas where it really can be dependent on the time we find ourselves in. And so just making sure that we are staying abreast of all of the resources that are available to support these students and their families. And then again, identifying and building relationships with community agencies, because this is a great way to, one of the key things, we don't want to duplicate services, but at the same time, it is good to be aware of, as programs, where, I don't want to say where we're missing steps, because I don't want to make it a negative term by any means, but sort of where that gap is, right? That gap is of where our program can provide services, but then those additional services that maybe, as a school district, as a community college, for whatever reason, we are unable to provide to these students. And so really partnering with those local agencies, those local community facilities that can provide that additional assistance to these students and their families. And making the students aware of those as well is absolutely key. And especially when you're talking about the community college system, obviously making the student aware, because they are technically by definition an adult for the most part when they enter into a community college. And then the secondary system, making that information and those resources available to the family or guardians or student themselves, depending on their situation. And then offering counseling or academic advising services several times throughout the semester. And I know that there are a handful of schools and community colleges that do this. But as educators, we know that there are some students who need that additional push. They need that additional encouragement. They need that additional support. And this is a great way to have someone on staff build a relationship with these students, because I think that's key. All special populations are self-identified. And so, and especially when we get into the community college system, being able to have those students say, okay, yeah, I am, crashing on the couch of a buddy. So I guess technically I do fall, into that homeless category. And a lot of times we don't see that happening unless that relationship is built, or unless these supports and services are really marketed and advertised. And so counselors and academic advisors are a great start to building that relationship, and having students meet with them several times throughout the semester to track their performance, provide those opportunities for career assessments, help them assist in goal planning, and then really looking at a tailored graduation plan, whether they're in high school or the community college. So this is your goal. You want to go into dental hygiene. Wonderful, great, fantastic. Now, what are the steps that we need to take in order to get to that end goal? What does this process look like? And then also providing academic intervention when and if it's ever needed throughout the year. So some more supports and services. Looking at, providing flexibility, you'll see the next two bullet points sort of coincide with one another, and just really being flexible for our students. So providing flexibility with school assignments, especially, the deadlines or supplies that may be needed. If you have a student who is experiencing homelessness, they may not have the resources available to them. They may not have internet access. They may not have a laptop. And I think we have experienced that now more than ever with the pandemic, and realizing that we do have some students who don't have the necessary supplies and resources to be successful in our classrooms and our programs. And so just being flexible with that and looking at other options. And then also more so on the community college side, allowing flexibility in course scheduling. We know we have a lot of students who are balancing extra classes, they're balancing employment, maybe they have parenting responsibilities. I mean, we know that life throws us curveballs and life gets in the way. And so allowing for flexibility for that, but then also having conversations with those students, letting them know that, okay, you were coming into class and you got a flat tire. That doesn't mean that your day just, ends and is over. You need to call, you need to communicate, whether it's with your employer, your teacher, if you had students that you were working with on a class project, like walking them through that process of what that looks like. And then allowing students access to the school shower, laundry facilities, and dependent on your your buildings, your policies, this could be applicable to both secondary and post-secondary. But, as a student who is worried about where they're staying tomorrow night, or who hasn't been able to shower for the week, or who hasn't been able to wash their clothes, I would imagine, I can't speak from firsthand experience, but I would imagine that makes it really hard to focus in a classroom setting or in a Zoom meeting when you're trying to learn and gain information. So being able to provide what may seem as little things to these students, allowing them to take a shower in the school showers, allowing them to use the washer and dryer to clean their clothes, really can make a huge difference in their mental presence during class time and during the program. And even along the same lines, providing students with a secure place to store personal belongings, whether that is, their lockers, a gym locker, that sort of reassurance to them that the important items in their life, their wallet, their phone, is in a secure place. Again, kind of takes that burden off of them so they can truly focus. And then establishing a food bank on campus or within the community. Depending on your area and depending on the population that makes up your city or town, that when, at least for me, when I'm hungry, I can't focus on anything. That's what I'm focused on. I'm focused on the fact that it has been however long since I've had my last meal. I'm focused on what my next snack is going to be. And so being able to provide a food bank that is staffed by people that these students are familiar with, that these students have already built a relationship with, that almost can alleviate the stigma of utilizing a food bank. And then it's also a great opportunity to involve other students and to make it a learning experience, right? To have them really be involved in the day-to-day operations of what it takes to run and operate a food bank. All right, some more promoting support services. So you'll see my lovely little image there that says labeled jars, not people. And hopefully you've noticed that throughout I have done my best to refer to this special population as individuals experiencing homelessness, right? We want to do people first language. And so we don't ever want to make, whether it's homelessness, whether they're involved in foster care, whether it's, we're talking about students with disabilities, that's not what defines them, right? That doesn't make them who they are. That is a part of them, but it's not what defines them. So I'm kind of jumping ahead here on my little bullet points, but when you are promoting services, when you're marketing those support services, try to refrain from using the word homeless, try to refrain from referring to them as homeless students, and really looking at alternative wording, whether that's, living in a temporary living arrangement, however creative and inventive you can be with that, feel free. And really describing what those different living arrangements are that qualify them for those services under the McKinney-Vento Act. So I know I have talked to programs in the past who have said, well, I have a student who, his parents kicked him out for X, Y, and Z reasons, and they are crashing at a buddy's house. And so in his mind, he doesn't fall within this category, right? He's not experiencing homelessness. He has a roof over his head. He has a couch that he's sleeping on. But again, that's where we go back to that fixed, adequate nighttime residence. And so it is sort of, the onus is on us to really define what those living arrangements are and how that qualifies them under a quote unquote homeless individual. And you'll see that, Perkins V refers to it as homeless individuals. And so the bureaucratic language and definitions and terminology obviously is what it is. We can't change that. But when we are talking to our students, when we're talking to our families, the less stigma that we can put on it, the better. So I'll jump back up here. I got ahead of myself a little bit there, but sort of along the same lines of lessening that stigma, making sure that we are informing all students, so all students and their families, about the rights and services that are made available under the McKinney-Vento Act. As I had mentioned, homeless status is self-disclosed, especially when we get into the community college system and when they are ages of 18 and adults. That is something that they have to inform you about. And so if we promote these additional supports, these additional services to the entire student body, to the entire college campus, and again, refraining from using that word homeless and really being conscious and deliberate in our terminology, you can reach a wider range of students and break down that label, break down that stigma to where hopefully they will be more inclined to come and communicate what they are experiencing and take advantage of these services, right? Because that's the whole point of this. We want our students who need that additional support to take advantage of them. We want to do everything that we can to make sure that we are helping our students be successful to the best of our abilities. And then making sure that when you're promoting and marketing materials, that you are sharing this information across campus, across your school, throughout the community. And again, that goes along the same lines of sharing the information out to everyone so that we aren't singling out any one student, any one family, any one group, right? Because like the image says, we want to label jars, not people. And so with that, I've kind of sped through here a little bit, but I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what your questions are. I want to know what are some things that you are doing with your program to support students who are experiencing homelessness. What are some things that you would like to see implemented in your programs? I know I'm asking you guys a lot of questions, but please feel free to ask me questions as well. But this is something that, like I said, this is a newer special population, so we are all still learning those evidence-based practices and strategies. And so it's always great to hear from the actual programs themselves. And then if you have looked at the super strategies, how do you see yourself implementing those super strategies? How do you see yourself utilizing those? So I have more slides and more information to share with you guys, but I want to pause here for a second and see if you have any questions or comments about the information that has been presented on thus far.
I do not see any questions in the question box, but we'll give everyone a minute to kind of ask any and see if any come through. And then while we are waiting on that, I did want to reiterate that this webinar is being recorded and you can access it via our website. And I will put that website in the chat for everyone, as well as the handouts from today are actually on the handout drop down on your GoToWebinar control panel if you'd like to download those, and they will also be on the website as well.
All right, well, while we're waiting for hopefully some questions and comments to come through, let me talk a little bit about the special population webinar series that ICSPS is doing. So this is part 1 of the webinar series. And so as you can see on your screen there, those are the dates for November and December. So next week, I believe, is already November 19th, and we will be discussing some strategies for supporting students with um, parents or a parent in the military in active duty. And then in December, we'll be looking at foster care involved students as well as economically disadvantaged students. And we will be continuing the series to cover all of the special populations, but this will at least get us through until the holidays. And you will see that these have every intention of being applicable to both the secondary and post-secondary system. The super strategy documents themselves are separated out. We do have a set specifically for secondary, and we do have a set specifically for the post-secondary system. And that was done intentionally. We do encourage partnership. We do encourage communication with your community college, with your high school, especially when it comes to CTE programs. However, when we are discussing the secondary system, we're looking at minors. We're looking at typically those students that are under the age of 18. And so because of that, there are some additional supports that are available to them. And then when we get into the community college system, typically, again, we are looking at adults by definition. And so that again pulls in that need for self-disclosure of being a special population, and that also includes the special population of out of workforce. So you'll see that the out of workforce special population isn't really applicable to the secondary system. And so as Kirsten said, the slides from today are available in the handout section and will be posted on our website as well. So you'll be able to access those registration links, and we will also be sending out media blast throughout the coming months of the upcoming special population webinar series. So please feel free to attend, and hopefully they will be informative for you as well.
Yes, thank you, Brittany. And then we did have a question of where does someone find the super strategies mentioned previously? And I'm going to put our ICSPS website in the chat here and send it out to everyone. And you can find all of our resources there, but I specifically am leading you to the special populations site page, and so you can access all the information about special populations there, and you'll notice at the bottom of that page there's a red button that says super strategies, and that will take you to all of our super strategies for secondary and post-secondary. And you'll also find the registration links on that exact page for the upcoming series webinars that we have for the 19th, the December 2nd, and December 15th. So you can go ahead and have easy access to register for the future webinars as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys actually beat me to it. So our additional resources at that very top there, in the slides within the handouts, there is the link to the special populations super strategies. And then a couple of other resources that I feel could be useful for you guys to utilize. And as always, if you have downtime, do any of us have downtime anymore? To browse our website and see some of the work that we've done, previous webinars, previous professional development that we've done, please do so, because we cover quite a bit. And again, it's all focused around that access, transition, and equity and retention. So absolutely browse our website and see what we have available. But one of the other series that is currently happening right now is our recruitment, engagement, and retention webinar series. And now the language is directed towards adult ed programs, and it is adult ed programs that are sharing their information. However, the first half, the recruitment piece, was done last month. And so all of those recorded webinars are available on our website. And it is talking about how to utilize social media platforms in order to recruit and engage our students. And I think that it can be applicable to both the secondary and post-secondary systems for CTE as well. Again, if you can, separate the terminology and the fact that we talk about adult education programs, it's really a great series. They had programs come on and share how they're utilizing Facebook, how they're utilizing TikTok, YouTube as ways to interact with current students and as ways to inform and recruit potential students as well. And I am a 1000% believer that hearing from programs, whether it's high schools, whether it's community colleges, actually hearing from people in the field who are doing the work is key. And like we say with recruitment, hearing from successful students, word of mouth to potential students is the best. Again, hearing from your fellow programs really is the best way to sort of see those innovative ideas and strategies for recruitment. And then the engagement and retention piece of that series is actually going on here this week and next week. And so that is the link there to where those recordings can be found, and also the link to access the registration if you want to see the live webinars. And then we have previously done a couple of webinar series when it comes to universal design for learning. And if you are not familiar with universal design for learning, or UDL, I think it is absolutely applicable for working with special populations with NCTE, because universal design for learning really looks at the fact that every individual learns in their own unique way, right? And that we have to, the best that we can and to the best of our ability, make sure that we are accommodating and providing opportunities for each of those different learning styles. And so that's a great series that we've put on as well. We also did a series with UDL with CAST, who really is the spearhead and the driving force behind universal design for learning. So please feel free to check all of those out and then browse around our website as well, because we do have a lot. I mean, I may be a little biased since I work for the center, but we do have a lot of really informative and great professional development and resources available. And so here is my contact information. If you have any questions regarding the super strategies, regarding special populations, please feel free to email me. We are still working remotely, so email is the best way to get a hold of me and communicate with me. And so, yeah, Kirsten, if we have any other questions or comments, thank you guys for joining us this afternoon, and I hope this was informative and that you walked away with some new helpful information. But yeah, do we have any other questions or comments?
We don't right now, Brittany. And then I wasn't sure, will there be a follow-up email going out to them or not?
Yes, there will be a follow-up, sort of a thank you for attending email going out to those who participated today and were on the call as well.
Great, and that will have a link to all of these, the webpage where all these resources are available as well for all of you. So easy access right in your email tomorrow morning. And yeah, there's no other questions coming through right now. So thank you so much, Brittany, for presenting to us today. And thank you to all of our attendees who attended today. And then with that, I'll let you close us out, Brittany.
All right. Yeah, thank you guys for attending. Again, be sure to join us next week when we talk about, support strategies for students with parents on active duty. And as always, I am an email away. If you have any questions or comments for me, please feel free to utilize that. So thank you so much. And we'll see you throughout the rest of the Special Population series. Thank you.